That's that pickup truck right there. I think we launched it like 100 feet in the air, and it went about 200 feet down the road, and it weighed about 8,000 pounds.
So this is the explosion of the Death Star.
So a lot of those shots, because they take place in space, you don't want the sparks like in a 4th of July fireworks shell. They all start to fall towards the ground. You want them to just go out and just continue going out. So the way they simulated that was filming either from the bottom and hanging the charge above them and blowing the charge up. So everything just goes towards the camera or away. Or they invert that and shoot straight down on it and everything blows up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get you.
You just shoot at a different angle, so gravity is working in your favor visually.
Is there, like in almost any explosion that we're seeing, or in a lot of them, or whatever, are we usually seeing kind of a trick? In the sense that, like, you're not really looking at something in the way that you think that you're looking at it.
Very much so in these kind of outer space movies. That was a large-scale miniature. So these guys are experts at miniature pyrotechnics to look like they're large. So they can use different materials that behave in a way that scales properly with the scale model.
And they're just shooting that like real micro lens style then?
Yeah, the special lenses, frame rates that are different than what you would normally use. A lot of times it's very high frame rates, and then they can slow it down, and they use pyrotechnic materials that burn a little slower and have more granular texture to the fire. So when they stretch it out on the big screen, it doesn't look like a tiny little teaspoon of gasoline exploding. It's got this thick, rich, dark black, smoky.
What's usually the hardest part of the explosion to get right?
These ones, it's scaling the velocity of the debris to make it look believable and realistic for what it is.
Yeah, because obviously if you're blowing up a real car, it's going to move a lot differently than if you're blowing up a tiny miniature little plastic car. What about like in a large scale explosion, one that's not miniaturized? What's like the most difficult part of that usually?
I mean, for me, the difficult part is always creating the look the director's asking for, and then keeping it safe for the environment and for the people. So that's, it's easy to make something huge, but that isn't always appropriate. We do stuff in the middle of downtown Los Angeles with, chrome and glass buildings all around, and we're making these huge explosions. We can't be breaking all the windows. It'd be easy to just make a huge explosion, but then there'd be a cost to pay. Loss of a license, going to jail, people getting injured. You just can't do that. So making it look big or even making it big but safe in those environments, that's where the challenge comes in. That's the hardest part.
Does this look familiar?
This is the scene of the harvester attack. Launching that pickup truck was pretty. I think we burned 8,000 gallons of diesel fuel that afternoon. I think we launched it like 100 feet in the air, and it went about 200 feet down the road, and it weighed about 8,000 pounds. So there's that's a real car going 100 feet in the air.
So is this the enemy of the state one?
The building existed, concrete building, and they were going to tear it down anyway. So they got the location department, found that building. It worked out for the scene. The director told the demolition crew that they wanted the building to come down in a certain way and not just flat to the ground in a million pieces, but leave some residual of the building kind of toppled onto the pile. So it was kind of like the cherry on top of the sundae. And he wanted the fireball to clear before the building fell so that the fireball didn't obscure the structural demolition portion of that explosion. So timing all of that, which involved some testing, calculating how long it took the fireball to clear before the building started moving, that was an elaborate timing plan that took a little bit of testing. And then, from experience and understanding of how things work, we were able to achieve that with a team of excellent people.
Yeah, I can see what you're talking about. The fireball goes, you see the building, then the building starts to collapse.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the elevator tower structure kind of ends up landing on top of the debris pile.
Have you ever had somebody not be rolling?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes it's, one of many cameras, so it's not the end of the world. Sometimes the camera jams. Sometimes the battery dies right at the moment. There have been a couple of those. That's
happened more than once? I would think.
It happens enough that it's, they always ask, are those batteries fresh? Is there any reason we're not going to get this? Like, are you sure everyone's going to be rolling and up to speed before they pull the trigger? And with digital, it's less important because the camera can run the whole time. And I think on the Enemy of the State building, there was a fire truck it's a long story. I don't know if you want to hear the whole thing, but.
Oh, no, I'm hooked. I'm already in.
So you saw there was a train that had to drive by the building, and there was cars that had to leave. Stunt guys had to run out. Helicopters had to fly in, and all this had to be timed with the building explosion. Primarily so that everybody was in a safe spot, but so all the action in front of the cameras was happening at the right time. So we had the whole city closed off, and the blasting machine is being charged up. The detonators are all in place. Everybody's standing by. There's a countdown of actions for all the different pieces. The train has to start early because it takes a long time to get up to speed. And all these things are happening in this big, long, elaborate timeline, queuing all this stuff to start, including cameras. And then there was a fire or some emergency call on the other side of this big, giant lockup. And the fire trucks had priority, and they drove right through the lockup, and they crossed in front of the path of the train, so the engineer had to stop the train. And when that happened, it put the whole sequence out of whack, but there was no stopping and resetting because our 10-minute window of closing the interstate was about to expire. So they had to go for it. And the helicopters had gone and done their pass and had cleared out, and the building hadn't exploded. And many of the cameras rolled out of film before the explosion happened. So they got it on like 3 or 4 out of 14 cameras.
Oh. God, that is just the universe.
Oh, it was horrible. But, they made the best of it. The editing, it came together really well, but there were some shots I would have loved to have seen, like the helicopter shot looking straight down. We never got to see that.
All because of a fire, all because of one domino.
They had priority. The security guards let him through, I guess. I don't know the details exactly, but it stopped everything. And that train took forever to get rolling again. And they couldn't push the button until the engine was past the building. So the guy, if something flew out of the building, it wouldn't hurt the operator of the train. Yeah, that was a big deal.